I was wrong. Yeah, absolutely on some of it. Let's talk about this Badgers basketball team. Why are they better than I thought they would be? All that and more on Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Thank you for making this your first listen every day. I really appreciate it. I say it a lot. I mean it a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in to everything we have going on, for helping us build this community. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50+ infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Let's talk about it. Before the season, I thought this Badgers basketball team would be better than they were last year for sure. My prediction was 4th in the Big Ten. I think I had them behind definitely Illinois, Purdue. I don't know who else I had them behind. Probably Michigan State. I think those are my top 3. I had Wisconsin 4th. So I thought they would be a solid tournament team. I thought they'd have a good year. They're better than I thought they were, and better than a lot of people thought they would be. So let's talk about why. Like, why why did I misread this? Why was I wrong? Why were a lot of us wrong? Let us know in the comments what you were wrong about on this team, and we'll always wrap it up and talk about it. You know what's fascinating to me, Badger fans? This is fascinating to me. 2 of the things I was most wrong about with this team, I mean, literally 2 of the things I was 180 degrees in the wrong direction. Like, I was crazy wrong about. I mean, I was insanely off on. Haven't impacted the team at all. The first one was I was all aboard Gus Yalden coming in right away, being a backup 5. I thought he would play 10, 12 minutes a game. I thought he would be kind of the physical backup 5. Now, I thought that would fluctuate a little bit. Like, some games it might be 6, 7, 8. But I thought he'd be solidly in that top 8. I thought he was the backup 5. He's one of the reasons why I was like, I think they're okay this year with front court depth because I think Yalden is going to give them something. And this isn't all a skill thing with Yalden. Like, he got hurt. There was some off the court stuff that was reported. There's some things that had to work out, probably some maturity stuff. But I was completely wrong. I thought he would come in, he'd be the backup 5. That didn't happen. And then the other thing I was completely off about that really hasn't impacted the team that much is I felt like this year would be Conor Seeley taking a step up from what he did last year, right? Kind of a progressional path forward towards the upper ceiling of the type of player I thought he could be. I thought he'd be a little bigger, stronger, better on the defensive end. I thought there'd be a little bit more off the bounce game with him where he could use that 3-pointer to draw people out, dribble by him, and create off the dribble. I thought they would use him more. I was so wrong on both these things, and it feels like it hasn't mattered, which is crazy. Now, inversely, you could say, well, geez, what if you were right on 1 or 2 of those? How good would this team be if Yalden was able to come in and be that backup 5 that can be a little more bruising and Conor took a step up? Like, honestly, if those 2 things had happened with everything else that's gone on, I mean, this is a Final Four team. It is what it is, period. Like, you'd be like 9 deep then. And but they didn't have, so it's dead wrong on those. But crazily, they didn't really impact the team for a couple reasons. They didn't impact it because Nolan Winter was able to come in, and he was kind of able to come in, be kind of that backup 5 that I thought Gus Yalden would be. And then you have Blackwell coming in, who has really taken up some of the slack that I was expecting from Essegian. So let's get into the other things I was completely wrong on. The first one is John Blackwell. I think that's where you have to start. Now, I actually wasn't the low guy on John Blackwell. I certainly didn't expect this. But I had said coming into the year, this is a sleeper guy in this class. People are overlooking him. He's better than people think. I said he was going to play. But I did not expect this at all. I did not expect a guy to come in and look like a junior, to be physically ready to step in and play incredibly intelligent basketball right away, become the best player off the bench right away. I was way off on what he could do this year. I thought it'd be kind of a spot minute thing. He would play. Some games he'd play 15, 20 minutes. Some games he'd play like 2 minutes. And he'd be a good rotational guy. He's much more than that. Like, when you go under the hood with John Blackwell, the numbers are astounding for a freshman. He's second on the team in defensive rebounding percentage. So the percentage of rebounds that are available from a defensive side, he's second on the team. When he's on the court, John Blackwell grabs almost 20% of the team's defensive rebounds as a 6'4" freshman. That's Johnny Davis stuff. Like, if we're just being honest, Johnny Davis, I think his sophomore year was in the low 20 percentile. low 20% of defense rebounding. Blackwell's at 19.8. 19.8 percentage for defense rebounding. He's second on the team behind Stephen Crowell among regulars. And it's not that far behind Stephen Crowell. So on the defensive glass, he's rebounding at almost the same rate as our upperclassman 7-foot center. That's insane stuff for a 6'4" freshman. I mean, that just doesn't happen in the Big Ten. The other thing I'd give you is true shooting percentage, which kind of factors in free throws, 3-pointers, 2-pointers. It's a better overall look holistically at how somebody shoots. Among everybody on the team, he's 4th on the team in true shooting percentage. That's incredible for a freshman. And it's even more impressive when you look at the people ahead of him, right? Carter Gilmore's ahead of him because all Carter Gilmore shoots are layups and dunks. Stephen Crowell's ahead of him. Stephen Crowell's a center. They typically do really well with true shooting percentage because, again, a lot of their shots are point-blank shots. And then Max Klesman just inched ahead of him based on the last 2 games where he's had a heater. I mean, Blackwell's ahead of Wall. He's ahead of Hepburn. He's ahead of Connor. He's ahead of Winter. Like, he's had a tremendous year. I completely missed how good he would be this year. AJ Storr is another one I was off on. No, I thought AJ Storr would be really important this year. I thought he would bring a ton of athleticism. I thought he'd be more of a defensive lengthy wing. I thought he'd be a transition scorer and like a pick and pop shooter. He's open, he's going to bang threes. He's got more of an all-around game than I gave him credit for. Some of the mid-range shots he's taken over defenders, really tough stuff. Some of the mid-range post stuff, being able to drive in, his ability to shoot from the line. I thought that we would get that with Storr. I thought he would help us there. But yeah, I wasn't in tune with the all-around game that he would bring to Madison. So that's another one. When you're looking at why is this team better, it's because Blackwell is way better than I thought he'd be. It's because Storr is more of an all-around game. And then the other one I'll talk about is the depth on the team. Now, I'm still not, if we're being honest, if you listen to the show a lot, I kind of knock heads with people who are telling me I'm way off on this one. I don't think I was way off. I still don't think this is a really deep team, but it's definitely better than I thought it was, right? And listen, you got to own your bad takes. You got to own it when you're wrong, because otherwise, what's the point? Like if you're never accountable to it, A, you're never going to learn anything, and B, people are going to stop taking you seriously. Yeah, like the depth on this team is definitely better than I thought it would be, and that's because of Blackwell. That's because Kamari McGee is having kind of a bounce back year. Now, not playing a ton of minutes, but when he's in there, he's much more impactful. That's because Nolan Winter was able to step in into those Gus Yalden minutes. So you're getting impacts from 3-4 players off the bench that can at least come in and in a tight game be serviceable players. So it's definitely deeper than I thought it would be. So the combination of John Blackwell, AJ Storr's all-around game, and the depth, I think are the biggest things I missed on. Now, if you want to talk about something, I do want to point out a couple of things that we talked about before the year that have come true. One of the things I said this a lot last year with Chucky Hepburn, I thought he was unfairly criticized at times because he was forced to score more. That's not really his role. And I said in the offseason, wait until you see what he does with more weapons around him, right? You're going to see a better version of Chucky Hepburn's game. I think we've completely seen that. In fact, there's parts of me where I'm like, man, you got to shoot a little bit more, right? Like I could use you being a tick more aggressive, but we've definitely seen the evolution of Hepburn's game. And now he's in kind of an ecosystem that fits him, right? He's supposed to be the guy in a captain's chair directing everything. He's not supposed to be the guy. He's not supposed to be the engine of that ship. He's supposed to be the captain driving it. And you're seeing that come true this year in the manifestation of really his all-around game. So I think we were pretty dead on with that one. And the other one is, I talked about Tyler Wall, and some people were really frustrated when he came back. And I said, well, look at him 2 years ago. Tyler Wall with the really high usage rate can struggle a little bit. Tyler Wall with more weapons around him is going to be a great part of this team. So I think those things were reasons for optimism that were correct. And then you factor that in with the other things that I missed on, with what Blackwell is going to bring, what Storr brought, the improved depth. You got a team that could make a run, and I'm here for it. I'm excited for it. Badger fans, we should be excited for it. These are the favorite kinds of teams, right? I talked about it on the reaction show against Northwestern. The teams that you don't really see coming, that exceed the ceiling you thought they had, these are your favorite teams because they surprise you and you get invested in it. It's one thing to be a Yankees fan and just expect your team to win, and then when they win, it's great. Obviously, I'm not a Yankees fan, so I don't know that feeling, but to have the team surprise you and smash through the ceiling in your head you set for them, those become your favorite teams. So we got to see how this thing ends. It's got a long ways to go, but they're definitely better than I thought they were, and I was wrong on them. All right, coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about Josiah Galvin. Back in the portal. What does it mean for the linebacker room? Is this the cost of getting Tackett Curtis? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel remains the number one source for all your sports betting needs. And right now, again, new customers, we've talked about this. There is a great deal to be had. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 guaranteed with a $5 moneyline bet, win or lose. And that's great money. But the playoffs are coming up. Packer fans, congratulations. You're probably watching this after the Packers game. If you're on here, a lot of you are Packer fans. Demolish the Cowboys, Packers, Niners next weekend. Y'all know where my loyalties are. With that $150 in bonus bets, you can use that on the Packers game. Early lines I've seen are 9.5 for the Niners. So this is a great time to get on FanDuel. If you want to enjoy some NFL playoff action, do it responsibly. But they have the best interface, the best support system, and the best payout system for all your betting needs. Parlay, spreads, teasers, futures, NFL playoffs are here. Get into the action. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today. Get into the action. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. You can do it responsibly, but it is the best place to do it. All right, let's keep talking here. Let's talk a little Josiah Galvin. And Josiah Galvin, we hardly knew ye. The linebacker transfer came out of University of Northern Iowa, came in earlier this portal season, came in earlier this year, was one of the early linebackers in this slew of linebackers that committed to Wisconsin in the portal, 6 of them in total. He is decommitted. Can you even decommit if you never even really committed? But he has re-entered the portal. He's heading to Stanford. He was barely here. What do we make of all this? I think there's some real fascinating stuff going on here with the portal, with recruiting, with college football in general. One of the things I've talked about a lot on this show with all the linebackers coming in, I've always said, look, this isn't Pokemon. You can't collect them all, right? You don't get every linebacker on the portal without some roster ramifications. And this is what it is. It's fine too. It's also fine, right? I think this is the cost of doing business. It's the cost of getting Tackett Curtis. Like, you get another guy who's going to play in the middle. Josiah Galvin and Josiah Galvin are similar type guys in some ways, playing similar type positions with similar type eligibility, right? And I'm sure he saw Tackett Curtis come in and, well, if you're getting that dude, where am I going to play? Like, it's a business decision on both ends, right? He made a business decision to leave Northern Iowa to come to Wisconsin to up his stock. And now he's making another business decision saying, there's too many linebackers here. I'm going to go somewhere I can play more. And by the way, a lot of fans hate that. A lot of fans give players shade for that. They give players a lot of shade for stay and compete. If you're afraid of competition, we don't want you anyway. I always push back on that a little bit, right? Like, just imagine in a professional setting, like let's say you're at a company where you want to be a manager or you want to climb the ladder, right? And there's several other people competing for that same manager's job. Or you can go to company B and they're offering you a manager's job, right? You do want people who want to compete, but you also got to understand that players only have a very limited window to play college football. And if their goal is to make it to the NFL, going somewhere where there's not as much competition for spots, sometimes it's not being afraid of competition. Sometimes it's just a smarter business decision, right? Every situation's different. Every player is different, but I'm never going to throw shade at a player who sees too much competition at a spot and says, I can go here and play right away. It's a business decision. And from the Wisconsin football standpoint, it's a business decision. They had to know, bringing in a Tackett Curtis after you brought in 5 other linebackers and you still have an Allegro on the roster. You still have some other guys on the roster that you're invested in. You're going to upset the apple cart a little bit. What's fascinating to me with this is we're seeing in the same cycle, you're recruiting over players that you've acquired, right? We used to talk a lot in the high school cycles about, if you don't play as a redshirt freshman, as a redshirt sophomore, the coaching staff might recruit over you. They might bring someone in and that someone's going to take your spot on the depth chart. And suddenly you're a redshirt junior and you haven't played. It's fascinating that we're seeing in the same transfer portal cycle, players being recruited over. That just shows you where college football's at right now. I don't think this coaching staff did anything wrong. I don't think Josiah Galvin did anything wrong. It just so happened a player that they liked a lot came available after Josiah Galvin committed, and they got him. And this is the domino effect of that. Josiah Galvin goes on. I harbor no ill will. I have no issues with it. I hope he crushes it. And quite frankly, if the cost of getting Tackett Curtis was potentially, and I'm not saying that's a 1-for-1. Like, I'm not in the locker room, obviously. I haven't talked to Josiah Galvin, but it seems like the timing's it lines up, right? And it certainly had to play into the decision-making. If the cost of getting Tackett Curtis, though, who, again, is 1 year removed from being one of the crown jewels in last year's class, if the cost of that is losing Josiah Galvin, that's a business decision you got to make, right? And that's where we're at in college football. So It's super interesting to me. Um, but I think you got to do it. And it's we're going to see more of that, by the way. We're going to see more and more of that as college football continues to march along this trajectory that quite frankly, we're just getting used to it, right? It's going to be more and more of this: a player commits and leaves, and then someone else comes in, and then two people will leave, and you'll get somebody else. That's just the world we're living in. All right, let's get some of your comments and some of your thoughts. We got a bunch of yours on here that I want to talk about. Um, let's start with this one here. This is from Commandant talking about the Northwestern game. Said not a pretty game for sure, but a win is a win, and this is the kind of game this team would have lost last year. I love that last part of that comment because I don't know if this team would have lost that game last year, but the team last year won by 9, right? If they had won last year, let me tell you the script of how last year's game would have gone. In my opinion, it would have came right down to the end. It would have come down to free throws, and Wisconsin probably would have missed the front end of 2 situations, and they would have lost 70-68, right? Or 64-62. Or they would have won 65-64. My point is, it would have been a close coin toss game. This year's team has the ability to extend leads, to push it a little bit. And yeah, Commandant's right. It wasn't the prettiest game. And again, I've talked about it. It wasn't an A+ game for the Badgers. That's okay. You got to be able to win when you play a B+ game too, a B- game. But yeah, last year's team, it would have been much closer. It would have came down to the wire. And I think it's really impressive that this year's team can kind of put teams away a little bit, close the door, create some space. I think it's a great comment from the Commandant. This is from Mark F. Gard is a great coach. Wisconsin is fortunate to have him. It's so interesting to me. And I've been more on the Gard is a good coach bandwagon for a while. There's still things he does that frustrate me a little bit. But what he's done just this year is incredibly impressive. This has been one of the hardest schedules in the country. He's done it while integrating AJ Storr, bringing in a new freshman off the bench, integrating him, dealing with a struggling Conor Seeley, who was a huge part of his team last year, a new role with Chucky Hepburn. This has been an incredible coaching job from Greg Gard so far this year. The new pieces he's gotten, he's meshed them in. He's managed a locker room that there could easily be some issues there with players not playing as much as they wanted, with transfers coming in, with Connor struggling, with Gus Yalden not playing. He's meshed in new players. They're running some interesting stuff offensively. Some of the continuity pick and roll stuff I think is really nice. They're getting some more transition, even secondary transition buckets. He's done a great job. Now, is he a perfect coach? No, he's not. There's like 3 of those. He's not Bo Ryan. He's never going to be Bo Ryan. But yeah, I think Wisconsin is fortunate to have him, and the recruiting's been getting better. Like, it's the last couple cycles have been ticking up. So I think that was always one of the biggest frustrations, right? Was on the recruiting side. If that continues to get better, I'm telling you, next year's team could be, boy, if you can find a way to replace Tyler Wall, which listen, that's not an easy task, but they're going to go to the portal to do that. Next year's team could be friggin' dynamic with. I think Freitag is going to play right away, and you get this crop of younger players that's going to develop. Could be dangerous next year. This is from Kerr. Oh, this next comment. Next year's team could be even better if players stick around. Guard seems to be hitting a little better rate on the recruiting trail. Agree. I didn't even mean to talk about your comment before I put it up there. I 100% agree. I think everybody on the roster is going to stick around for the most part. Certainly, there's going to be questions about a guy like Conor Seeley. There's going to be questions about guys that are further down the bench. But I think just about everybody's going to be here next year. You're going to add in a Freitag, and they're going to hit the portal again. Next year's team could be a lot of fun. And I agree with you. The recruiting has been a little better. Now, it has to continue getting better. Like, you look at some of the misses we've had. A Jackson McAndrew, that was a tough miss. That was a player that would have been a nice one to close. Karn Knipple, those are tough to close, but he's got to close them eventually. But yeah, the recruiting has been getting better. I agree. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to finish this out with the rest of your comments, including what could Wohler and Tackett look like on the court at the same time? Should Conor Seeley have gotten more minutes? Last game, only played 3. Are we overhyping the new offensive line coach? A bunch of comments coming up on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for friends of the show over at Jace Medical. I've talked a lot about Jace Medical, and to me, it's about being a father, right? It's about knowing. That's why I have spare batteries. That's why I have dehydrated food in the basement. I've got all those things. That's why I have, all these other kind of survival things. I have the drinking straw, right? That you can drink and it filters the water for you. It's about being prepared and being empowered to take care of your family. I have a Jace case. You get 5+ medications that can treat over 50 plus infections. It's as simple as that. You get the case, you get instructions, you get detailed information to know how to use them, and you can always contact the pharmacy and learn a little bit more about what you need to do with storms, shortages, pandemics, supply chain issues. Just you want to be prepared. You want to be empowered to care for your family. And that's why Jace Medical is simple. You go online, you fill out a form, you get the prescription life-saving medications to your door. They give you peace of mind that you have access to medication in an emergency for you and your family. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using our code Locked On at checkout on JaceMedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Be empowered to take care of your family. Be empowered to take care of yourself. And don't stress as much with all the craziness in the world. Get the Jace case, put it in a cabinet, worry less, enjoy more. That's what I have. That's why I have my Jace case. All right, let's talk about some more comments. Let's just get into more of your thoughts. I love doing these type of shows where we just throw some of what you have going on and some of your thoughts on these different topics up. This one is from Will Hanna. Conor Seeley getting a whopping 3 minutes of play made no sense. This is the Northwestern game. He scored 5 points in that minuscule amount of playing time. He was playing hard, and his defense was not a problem. Yeah, I got to be honest, Will. I thought he played more than 3 minutes until you brought this up. I thought he did get a little more burn than that, and he did get 5. He got 3, that quick 3 off the pin down, and then he had that really nice drive where he kind of contorted his body, hit the bucket on the other side. I will tell you, he should probably work on that offhand, and then he doesn't have to contort his body as much. He can just finish with the offhand, but that's an off-season thing. He was playing hard. I think this is a case of how do you sit Max Klesmit, though, right? And normally I would agree with you on this. I've thought Conor has needed more minutes for the most part this year. I would have started him. I talked about it. That's something I was wrong on with the way Klesmit has played. That's another one. I should have just started that one. I was wrong on that one too. I just don't think this was the game to have Conor out there more. I agree with you. It's hard to take him out when he scored 5 points in a flurry, but with the way Klesmit was playing and the type of defense he was playing, where else can Conor play? That's part of the issue. You can't play him at small forward very much. He's going to get targeted there. He's not a good enough rebounder, and you can't play him at point. Potentially, you can move Max over to the point and then play Conor more at the 2. Maybe that's a solution, but then you're taking Hepburn out. It just felt like a game where it wasn't going to be an Essegian game because of how well Klesmit was playing. Excuse me. I don't fully disagree with your point. I actually thought he had played more, so it is a good question. J says, I wish we had come to play against Arizona. Even if we didn't win, if we came ready to play, we would have at least gave them a game. That wasn't us. We were just cold, not ready, didn't believe. The thing with the Arizona game that we probably didn't talk about enough, or maybe I didn't talk about enough, is Wisconsin was coming off a really tough 3-game stretch, and Arizona had time to game plan, prepare. The game was in Arizona. It was in Tucson. There was a lot going into that was going to make that more difficult that we probably didn't talk about enough. I agree. I wish we had played them a little tougher. I still think that's a bad matchup for Wisconsin. The game, I think if you play a neutral site game or if the game's in Madison, the game's generally going to be much closer than what happened down there, but that still just feels like a bad matchup to me. I think they're more athletic across the board, and I think we struggle with their tempo. They just run. They're thoroughbreds. So I don't know. I think your point is probably correct. I wish we would have came to play better. I still think it's a bad matchup. Ronjo says, Storr still gets impatient when he doesn't score. I think so, but it's important to remember that he's a hyper-athletic wing who's a sophomore, right? This is a dude who all the way up to his first year at St. John's would have been like the primary scoring option. I mean, he's used to jacking shots. He's used to being in AAU tournaments where they're giving him the ball and saying, go get yours. So I actually think it's pretty impressive, the ability he's shown to rein in his shots. If you remember at the beginning of the year, I thought the shot selection was much worse. I think it's got tremendously better. Yes, he still gets a little impatient in times, but that's because he's a sophomore who's used to being a focal point on offense. And when you get a guy like that, you're going to have to put up with a couple bad shots. But even some of those he makes. He's made some really tough shots. You can think back to the Northwestern game. There's that kind of like contested 15-footer where he floated it in. I've actually been pretty good with his shot selection. I think it's shown a ton of growth and it's shown a ton of maturity. And again, that's also credit to Greg Gard for helping mesh all these pieces together. So I can't wait to see his next level because Storr's got another level in there. This is from, I didn't see who this is from, but this is talking about the new offensive line coach, Blazek. And the fact that he's from Vanderbilt, the fact that he was at North Dakota State, a lot of fans maybe had some issues with that. They thought a higher pedigree hire was in order. And this comment is what a lot of fans don't understand is there are genius coaches everywhere in the country. Unless you grow up with connections, most of the time you're going to have to slowly move up the ladder. I love this comment. So as some of you know or don't know, I did used to coach a little bit of basketball. I wish I could have continued on that journey, but I had kids and it just got schedule wise too difficult. But I was coaching at the Division III level on my year there, and there are brilliant coaches in D2, in D3. I mean, like brilliant, incredibly talented coaches at those levels who will never see the light of Division One because they got started late, because they don't have a connection, because they never played, whatever it is. There are brilliant coaches everywhere. And there's bad coaches everywhere too. There's brilliant coaches in D1 and bad coaches in D1. I would never discount a coach because he was at North Dakota State or Vanderbilt. Just from a broad sense. Now, you still have to look at the individual coaching accolades. And if you still don't like the hire, that's fine. But I wouldn't make it because he was at Vanderbilt. And I agree with this comment on that sense. Carnage says we need 4- and 5-star linemen. All of Michigan and Bama's guys are that, not 2 stars from Chippewa Falls. You just need good players. And linemen are tough to evaluate. We've had a lot of 4- or 5-star linemen that haven't worked. So I don't know. A lot of our NFL guys were 3-star guys, and they just developed them. So I don't know. I don't know if you need to recruit well. I think that's what I would say. You need to recruit and evaluate really well. And sometimes that means a 3-star guy, right? Ryan Corey's a 3-star guy. I like him a lot. I think he's going to be a really, really good player for Wisconsin. Logan Brown was a 5-star guy. Didn't work out. Nolan Rucci was a 5-star guy. Didn't work out. It's a mixed bag, man. I hear you, though. You need better players. You need good talent. But I think on the offensive line, evaluating and coaching are more important than other spots. I think other spots you need more pure talent. Ferb says Wohler and Tackett on the field are going to be peak fandom. They're going to be fun. Now, I will say this. I think you're probably going to get some mistakes for those guys, more so Tackett, or he makes a mistake running 100 miles an hour, and you're like, gosh, that's the wrong gap. But there's going to be some fun highlights. I'll tell you that. Bob Milborn says, let's not overhype this new coach. We have no idea how it works out in Madison. I would rather have great players than coaches. That's fair. I don't know if anybody's overhyping him or not. I like the hire. I like the background, but I don't know offensive line coaches, right? Like I'm very much in wait and see mode. I know other people are really high on this. I know some people have expressed doubt. I'm very much in wait and see mode. And this is an important hire, and I hope they nailed it because you can't continue to revolve the door at any coaching spot, but especially at offensive line. So I hope they nailed it, but I don't think I'm overhyping it. Maybe other people are. NDB says, last year I was out on guard. I love this comment. NDB said, last year I was out on guard, couldn't stand him. I need to calm it down. He's assembled a great team this season. This shows a ton of maturity. And this is one of the reasons I do a show like this every once in a while where, hey, I was wrong. You have to have the maturity to admit when you were wrong. And yeah, last year a lot of people were out on guard. If you were at that spot, that's fine. That was an NIT team. That was an unacceptable Wisconsin team. Those are fair takes to some degree. But don't you have to now kind of come back and say, okay, I was right you can be right last year, but I got to reevaluate this a little bit because this team's a lot better. And Gard has done an incredible job this year. And I think you got to reevaluate a little bit if you were dead set on Gard being done. Doesn't mean you have to say he's a great coach. It's still early in the Big Ten season too. Let's be honest. Things can change very quickly, but you got to be impressed with what he's done this year. You just have to be. They navigated an incredibly tough schedule, and they've done it with aplomb. So, yeah, I think it's a great comment, NDB. We're going to wrap it there. Really do appreciate everybody who made the comments, everybody who tunes in, everybody who watches, everybody in the community. Y'all are amazing, and I hope you have an incredible weekend. If you're a Packer fan, congratulations. We'll see you next weekend. Let's go Niners.